to you, Chair.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Licensing Panel virtual meeting. We'll start with a round of introductions. My name's Amanda Pinnock. I'm the chair of the panel. I'll go through my colleagues, panel members. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, Councillor David Hall from the Liversidge and Cumbersall ward.
Thank you. Councillor Granger-Mead.
Councillor Granger-Mead from Liversidge and Cumbersall ward.
Thank you. The legal representative.
Hello, my name is David Stickley. I'm a solicitor working for the council. I'm here to provide any legal advice the panel may require.
Licensing officer.
Good morning all, my name is Mike Skelton, Licensing Officer, Kirklees Council.
I believe the applicant isn't here, so the applicant's representative.
Hi, good morning. My name is Nick Semper and I'm from the licensing guys and I'm currently somewhere in Wales. Thank you.
And we have objectors from West Yorkshire Police. Mr. Woodhead? Ms. Jagger, you with us?
Yes, PC Jagger here from Kirklees Licensing. Richard Woodhead's just having a technical issue, but he should be able to hear me in a moment.
Fantastic.
Hello, panel. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I've got two mute buttons on my machine for some reason, so anyway. I'll just mute the one. It's Richard Woodhead from West Yorkshire Police.
Thank you. Okay, just to remind everyone that this meeting is being webcast and recorded. So I'll quickly whiz through the agenda and then we'll launch straight into the application today. So minutes of the previous meeting that was held on the 3rd of March. I think I was the only one here on the panel that was at that meeting, so I can approve those. Any items of interest to declare, Councillor Hall? Councillor Granger-Mead?
No.
Okay, next item's admissions of the, sorry?
None from me, Chair.
Thank you, colleagues. Admissions of the public, this has been webcast. Any deputations or petitions?
None received, Chair.
Lovely. So let's go straight into the application then. So it's in relation to the Licensing Act 2003, and it's in respect of an application for grant of premises licence for Blue convenience store situated at 46 Brackenedge Lane in Dewsbury, WF 13 1PT. So we'll begin by asking the licensing officer, please, to outline the application.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Just to confirm what you've just said there, this is an application for the grant of a premises licence for a premise that will be known as the Blue Convenience Store at 46 Brackenedge Lane in Dewsbury. The application was received on the 21st of January this year. For the grant of the licence. The application was made on behalf by JMC Licensing Consultants on behalf of the applicant, and a copy of this application may be seen at Appendix A. The licensable activities applied for by the applicant are as follows: the supply of alcohol for consumption off the premises 7 days a week from 8 AM up until 11 PM. During the consultation period, one representation was received. The representation was from West Yorkshire Police. The representation was received on the 1st of February this year, but subsequently withdrawn as the police wanted to seek clarification on the relevance of any criminal convictions that were deemed spent under the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. Having obtained this clarification, the police resubmitted their application on the 4th of February this year. On the 11th of February this year, further correspondence was received from the police. This correspondence was a series of photographs that had been obtained, and they wanted to exhibit these alongside their representation. The application was also served on the other responsible authorities and local ward councillors, to which none objected within the specified time frame. The representation from the police considers that the following licensing objectives would not be met should this licence be granted, those being public safety and the prevention of crime and disorder. A copy of the representation from the police and the supporting documents can be seen at Appendix B. It's also just worth mentioning, Chair, just for your benefit and the other members of the panel, that the application form at Appendix A is obviously heavily redacted for obvious reasons. And as such, you can't see who the nominated person to be the DPS is. I can confirm that nominated person is the applicant themselves. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. Councillor Hall?
No questions, Chair, at this point.
Councillor Graham-Bede?
Yeah, sorry, can I just clarify, because I didn't really hear you properly. I know you said the application was sent to councillors and they had no objections. Were they also sent copies of the police reports?
No, they weren't, Councillor, no.
Any more questions, Councillor Granger-Mead?
No, fine, Chair.
Thank you. Mr Semper, any questions at this stage? Any of the objectors have any questions for the licensing officer?
No, West Yorkshire Police are fine.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we'll move on to then the applicant's representative, Mr Semper. If you can outline your client's application, please.
Surely, ma'am. Well, the application is pretty standard fare and sits before you. I don't think that it needs further explanation. What does need some explanation is the work of the Licensing Act 2003. Now, this is a great piece of legislation as it separates licensing into two separate and distinct different streams. Firstly, you've got personal licenses with the mechanisms to filter out persons who should not have personal licenses for whatever reasons, and that's done under section 117 of the Act. And then you've got the second bit, which is premises licenses, which is what you're considering today, with the mechanisms to filter out premises that should not have premises licenses for whatever reasons. And that is under section 16 of the Act. Now, these two sections of the Act are some 101 sections apart in the legislation, and in our submission are very separate animals. Now, what has happened here is that the two streams have become conflated and confused. My good friends, and I mean that most sincerely, Richard Woodhead and Katie Jagger, don't like this application for a premises licence because Milan Mohammed, who holds a personal licence, has applied for it. Put simply, they don't like this application because they don't think that Milan should be allowed to sell or authorise the sale of alcohol because of what he did back in 2018. Now, if they are of the opinion that Milan is not a suitable person to sell alcohol in his own right, then they should seek to have his personal licence revoked under the existing mechanisms within the Licensing Act 2003 that facilitate that outcome. And I'm pointing your lawyer to section 129. But this application is for a premises licence. The Licensing Act makes only two stipulations about applicants for a premises licence under section 16. Firstly, they must be over 18, and secondly, they must intend to carry out a business involving the sale and supply of alcohol. That's it. And Milan fulfills both those requirements. Thus, this section 16 application simply stands or falls on its own merits. Now, when properly advised by your legal advisor, your decision on this premises licence will be based today on but two factors alone: whether the operating schedule and the offered conditions promote the licensing objectives, or whether they do not. The application lies before you, and in our considered opinion, both the operating schedule and the offered conditions do indeed promote the licensing objectives. That's it. That's our position. Right. Now, Milan can't be with us today as he is stranded in Iraq looking after his family during this pandemic, and international travel is nigh on important. Internet coverage is sparse and unreliable, and as is the constant supply of electricity. So I'm afraid you've just got me. Now, important, I am not here to excuse what went on in 2018. Milan has pleaded guilty. He's owned up to what he did. He's accepted his punishment. He's completed his sentence. He's paid those fines and the attendant costs. Consequently, these convictions are spent. Her Majesty's government is very clear through its primary legislation, I'm talking about the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act here, okay, on when an individual is entitled in law to move on from their mistakes and to get on with their lives. Milan has learnt from that and has not reoffended since. He is asking that you too, in accordance with the will of Parliament, allow him to move on as well. I would also point out that Milan first obtained his personal licence back in July 2017. The district judge sentenced him in 2018 in the full knowledge of the responsible authorities that he was a personal licence holder and saw fit not to revoke or even suspend his personal licence. If the responsible authorities wanted to revoke his personal licence, then this was their opportunity to do so. That same opportunity existed through the entire life of those convictions whilst they were unspent. Yet the responsible authorities have been content not to challenge that grant and to allow him to continue to hold a personal licence ever since. Therefore, that opportunity has, with respect, been allowed to pass, to expire. Now, as I've said, this is a new application for a grant of a premises licence. Prior to being converted into a shop, these premises were, I believe, a Ladbrokes betting shop. Therefore, there is no history of the sale of illicit tobacco products from these premises whatsoever, and therefore taint should not come into your considerations today. Now, the police representation is centred upon the crime and disorder licensing objective and is based on the spent previous convictions. However, they have made no specific mention of whether they find Milan acceptable as the designated premises supervisor and have solely confined themselves to him being the owner. As they have remained silent on the subject of suitability to be a designated premises supervisor to date, then I'm sure your legal advisor will agree that it now cannot be raised as an additional head for you to consider in your deliberations today. So in summary, it is easy to understand what the police concerns are. You do, so do I, and so does Milan. He states that he has put this episode behind him. He is supported in that claim through the fact that his convictions are now spent in law. He is, however, ever mindful that his shop will be regarded as potential risk premises by the responsible authorities and will therefore make every endeavour to ensure and prove that they are operating at optimum levels of compliance going forwards. Had this been an application for a personal licence and had these convictions been unspent, then you could rightly examine Milan's antecedents. However, this is a premises licence application under section 16, and you should therefore solely address your minds as to whether the operating schedule and offer conditions promote the licensing objective. In our submission, they do. And consequently, I exhort you to grant this highly conditioned yet modest application. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Semper. I think at this stage, we need advice from the legal advisor as to what we should be taking into account, what we should be considering, listening to the information from Mr. Semper. Last night, I tried really hard to find any information in the Licensing Act myself, and I struggled to make sense of things. So I'd really like to hear from the licensing office, the legal officer. I'm not sure if we can have that conversation in public or whether we need to move to a private room to have those discussions. So I'd like some advice on that, please. Mr. Semper, is there something else you'd like to add?
Yes, ma'am. It might help. I'm getting some feedback. it might help were I to email my submission into you directly so that you can deliberate over it with your legal advisor over coffee for 10 minutes maybe.
I'm not sure if that's appropriate either. We'll need advice on that.
Yeah, Chair, yeah, I would have said it's appropriate for us to have that conversation in private and not in public.
I wonder if Nicola can make that arrangement. So for the time being, we'll adjourn this meeting until we've had an opportunity to take advice from the legal representative on how best to proceed. Thank you. Okay. So thank you everyone for your patience. We need an opportunity to speak to the legal advisor about the issues raised by Mr. Semper. So moving back to the agenda then. So does anyone have any questions for Mr. Semper? I don't have any questions. Councillor Hall?
No questions, Chair.
Councillor Granger-Mead?
Yes, I'm just wondering if is it Mr. Semper? Is it? Can you hear me? Right.
It's a bit choppy, ma'am.
I'm just wondering what the personal has been for the last 3 years. You said he hasn't been offended. So I'm just wondering, has he been holding a position where is my connection really bad? Can you hear me?
Not very well.
Oh. I'm just wondering what he's been doing the last 3 years.
Right, ma'am. I think you're asking what's he been doing for the last 3 years. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know.
I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering if he's.
Ma'am, I don't know. I can't hear you, but I don't know. I'm sorry he's not here. Had he been here, he would have been able to answer these questions, but I've given you the explanation why he can't be here. He's stuck in Iraq, ma'am. You know, and subject of, you know, further discussions with my client via email. I don't know what the answers are, ma'am, and I don't want to guess.
No, it's just that you made the point of saying that he hadn't reoffended in the last couple of years. So I was just wondering if you knew if he was still in the trading of alcohol and tobacco.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
No more questions, Councillor Granger-Mead?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Mr. Skelton, licensing officer, do you have any questions of Mr. Semper?
No, Chair, I'm good at this point, thank you.
Mr. Woodhead or Miss Jagger, any questions of Mr. Semper at this stage?
Not at this point, Chair, no.
Okay. All right. So the next item is to move on to the objectors. So Mr. Woodhead, it's your application. Well, it's your objection.
Thank you, Chair. Can everybody hear me okay?
Clearly, yes.
Oh, good. I just do need to clear a couple of points up, though, that Mr. Semper did raise about his client still possessing a personal license. The reason that the courts didn't take his personal license off him, and the reason that Chesterfield local authority have not removed the applicant's personal license, is that the convictions that the applicant was convicted of in the courts are not relevant offences under the Licensing Act. They are not linked to non-duty paid tobacco, and they are not linked to copyright either. So they were not in a position, and they could not remove the applicant's personal license, and that is the only reason why he still has one. So, as you will all be aware, West Yorkshire Police initially objected to this application, but we lifted the objection until clarity was sought on the use of spent convictions. Now, like Mr. Semper said, spent convictions, relevant convictions, are only used on the grant of personal licenses. This is a premise license application. Now, the panel may choose not to take any convictions into account. So what I'm going to do to keep it pretty straightforward and to keep it simple is I will not be referring at all to the applicant's convictions. What I will be referring to, though, is the photographs that were submitted to myself by Trading Standards, and I will also be referring to the letter that was submitted to me by trading standards, highlighting what they found when they last visited the applicant's shop. Now, we do feel that the main reason behind the objection, obviously, is that granting a premise license to Mr. Milan Mohammed will seriously impact on both the crime and disorder licensing objective, as well as the public safety objective. Now, when Mr. Mohammed had a shop in Scunthorpe, it was visited by trading standards in December 2017. Now, when trading standards visited his shop in Scunthorpe, his home address was in Chesterfield. So he was the DPS of a shop in Scunthorpe, but living in Chesterfield. The application we received, the applicant, even though he's currently in Iraq, his home address in the UK is still in Chesterfield, but he would be expecting to be both premise license holder and DPS for a shop in Dewsbury. Now, when Trading Standards visited the shop in December 2017 in Scunthorpe, they found 17,840 illegal cigarettes. This equated to 982 packets of cigarettes, with an approximate retail value of £9,812. They also discovered 6.25 kilograms of hand-rolling tobacco, which is 125 pouches, and that would have a normal retail value of £3,562. Okay. What I'm going to say now, panel, is I'd like you all to refer to the letter from North Lincolnshire Trading Standards, which was sent to Humberside Police and myself after I requested further details on the license visit that took place at his shop. I won't be referring to the court summary, but Karen Wood is the North Lincolnshire Trading Standards officer who visited the shop, and she has to say in her email that it was the most elaborate concealment that they had ever encountered. It was a custom-made cupboard beneath a sink with a magnetic closure that was probably still under construction, as they only found it because the applicant or the applicant's staff were in the process of filling the hidey hole up when it was raided. To also add deliberate concealment to this, there was also a pack of about 20 garlic bulbs that was placed under the sink, which was presumably there to try and put the sniffer dog off the scent. Now, if the panel can also now go to the end of the report, and you'll see some attached photographs that the Trading Standards sent to me. Can you all see the photographs? Yeah. Can everybody hear me? Everybody else has gone on mute. Is it just me?
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's me. I'm not good with technology. So the first photograph, hopefully, that you'll see is the photo of the sink base unit with like a small Belfast style sink on it. And the back has been removed. So the back of the sink unit has been removed and the wall behind has been removed. And inside is the illegal stash of tobacco. I hope your photos are in the same order as mine. The second photo I have is is a photo of two holdalls containing the cigarettes and the tobacco products that were subsequently seized by Trading Standards after they've been removed from the hidey hole. The third picture I have in my order is again a picture of the sink. You can see the sink on the top of the unit. The unit back's been removed and the illegal stash is quite visible on that photograph. On the fourth photograph I have, it shows the magnetic concealment lock, which will have been used to lock the back of the unit in place, so the cigarettes would have been completely hidden. And then the final photograph I have, oh, sorry, the second to the final photograph I have is again the cigarettes in situation in the illegal hidey hole. And the last photo is a photo of 20 cloves of garlic that was stashed in the hidey hole to try and mask the scent of tobacco to put off the sniffer dogs. Okay. What I would like to summarise now is that I know Mr. Semper mentioned that the Licensing Act divides into two. It does divide into two. And a premise licence holder and a DPS don't have to necessarily be the same. But the granting of a premise licence is a very significant thing to do. And the applicant wants to be both DPS and premise licence holder. So I do ask the panel to be mindful that granting the premise licence could impact on the licensing objectives. The applicant, who wishes to be both DPS and both premise licence holder, has demonstrated in his past actions that he has no regard for the UK law. Granting a premise licence to such a person could encourage crime and disorder in Dewsbury Town Centre. It could impact on the health and well-being of the Dewsbury residents because people will and do buy cheaper cigarettes and tobacco if they can obtain it, be it either non-duty paid or counterfeit tobacco. Also, the fact that cheaper tobacco and cheaper cigarettes are available does encourage younger persons to start smoking because they can obtain these illegal products. The UK taxpayer has suffered due to the actions of this man in a lost revenue from the sales of such products. And you must remember, panel, please, that finally, what message would it send to legitimate shopkeepers and businesses who are struggling to make ends meet if it's decided that the applicant can operate a business in Dewsbury Town Centre with the added bonus of an alcohol licence? So, Chair and panel, that is the crux of the police objections today. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a few questions. So I want to understand the situation with the DPS licence. Now that we've been through this, irrespective of what the outcome is going to be today, do the police intend to apply to revoke the personal licence?
Chair, the police cannot apply to revoke his personal licence because the convictions that he was convicted under are not relevant. I have been in touch with Chesterfield, who granted his personal licence, and we went through it at length. The convictions he has are not relevant under the Licensing Act. That's why I've not referred to them. His actions, I've not referred to criminal acts, I've referred to the actions that he has been doing. This gentleman will continue to have his personal licence until he is convicted under of a relevant offence as opposed to just any offence.
So just to be clear, what you're saying to me is you wouldn't be successful if you applied to revoke his personal licence?
We couldn't even apply to revoke it, panel, because it's not a relevant offence.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Semper indicated that as a panel, what we need to be taking into account or considering, along with what you've discussed, is the operation schedule and the offer of conditions that have been made and whether they're reasonable. And I just wanted to know whether you want to comment on those in the application. So I think it's from page 26. Is there anything in there that you sort of object to or take issue with that you want to bring to the attention of the panel?
No, Chair. The objections are. No, it was on the application. Yeah. So I was getting some feedback. Is everything okay? Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. No, I've gone through the application and the conditions submitted are acceptable. However, we feel that because of the actions of the applicant in the past, the conditions would not be strong enough to allow this license to be granted. If the panel is considering granting the license, West Yorkshire Police would like to ensure that we have some extremely strong conditions in place to ensure that the licensing objectives aren't impacted upon. Unfortunately, at the moment, we're not in a position to volunteer those conditions, and we would ask that the panel adjourn for a month so the conditions can be worked out and then come back to you with the conditions for you to okay.
Okay, thank you. I haven't got any more questions. Councillor Hall?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You referred, Mr. Woodhead, to the actions of the applicant, but not to the offences. These actions were not serious enough to convict him of an offence which would be relevant to have his personal licence revoked. Therefore, why do you suppose that those actions are serious enough to have a premises licence revoked?
Well, Councillor, the trouble is with the Licensing Act, relevant offences can only be specifically for the personal licence. You can be, I'm not saying you would be, but you can be convicted of possession of Class A drugs, and that still allows you to be a personal licence holder. The only thing that bars you is if you've been convicted of possession with intent to supply. There are certain convictions and there are certain parts of the law that are relevant to a personal licence. You can still have a very serious conviction, but be a personal licence holder. The actions were prosecuted in court. I've not referred to the court, but the evidence that I presented demonstrates the actions that this applicant is willing to take. The only reason he didn't get his personal licence removed was that it was led by trading standards and they're prosecuted under parts of the Tobacco Act, which is not a relevant offence. If they'd have been convicted under evasion of duty, then that is a relevant offence. So it's because of what he was convicted of, not necessarily how serious he was convicted of, if you understand what I'm saying, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Granger-Mead?
Yes, I've just got one question. It's just a minor question. During the police investigation, was there any evidence that he had been selling tobacco to under 16s or not?
Councillor, unfortunately, it was out of our area. It was in Humberside, over in on the Scunthorpe area. We've no evidence to say that he was selling to underage, but you know, we've no evidence to say that he wasn't either.
Thank you. I'm done, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I need to ask the licensing officer if they have any questions of the police. Mr. Semper, do you have any questions?
In the interests of speed, I'll sum up. I'll raise my observations in summing up, if that's okay, ma'am.
Okay. All right. And I don't think there's any other responsible authorities like Environmental Health here today who want to raise any objections or make any representations. Is that correct, Mr. Skelton?
That's correct, Chair. The only representation was received from the police.
Thank you. Okay, so we're at the stage now where I'm asking everybody to sum up. So, Mr. Skelton, could you sum up on behalf of the licensing authority?
Certainly, Chair. So we've got an application here for the grant of a premises licence that the police feel strongly against granting because of the past actions by the applicant. Mr. Semper's absolutely right. The Licensing Act doesn't have any specific section on there regarding convictions for applicants. It just relates to personal license holders. However, there is a section within the Act, section 18, subsection 6, which refers to relevant representations, and the police obviously feel that the actions of this particular individual in the past do compromise the promotion of those objectives. So it's a tricky one for the panel, and that's all I can really sort of add at this stage, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Skelton. Mr. Semper, I think you need to go next.
Right, ma'am. Okay. Now, we're grateful to Mr. Woodhead for distancing himself from these spent convictions. However, he's then gone on to bring up evidence of photographs, of letters from Chesterfield Trading Standards, from things that happened in Scunthorpe in 2017, and mention of a home address in Chesterfield. Okay. All of that is evidence of criminal convictions that have been dealt with by way of conviction. And that conviction is now spent. Okay. Before you is a section 16 application, and they are solely objecting to him being the applicant. Section 16 spells out there are two prerequisites for an applicant for a premises license. A, that he's over 18, and B, that he intends to carry out a business involving the sale and supply of alcohol. He fulfills both. Now, I'll now point to Appendix 2, where I think it's pages 28, 29 on my bundle, might be slightly different pagination in yours, which is the police representation. The police have not objected to Milan being the DPS in their representation. End of. Okay. Now, there's been mention about the message it sends out to other shopkeepers. Well, each application is considered on its own merit. So considerations of the message it sends out to others are irrelevant with respect. Okay. And if we're going to talk about messages we send out, what messages did we send out about Kirklees' council's adherence to the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, for example? I mean, it's just an endless argument. So there's been mention of by the police that they would be prepared to accept, were you in a position to grant, additional conditions. Well, between the three, between Ms. Jagger and Mr. Woodhead and myself, there is no need to adjourn for a month. I'm sure we can adjourn for an hour, and we can come up with additional conditions, whichever ones you would like. Okay, the applicant's entitled to a decision in a timely and proportionate way. Now, fair play to the police for raising their concerns. Fair play. Okay. But trading standards, who have their statutory responsibility as a responsible authority to champion such matters, have not made any representation before you. Neither have environmental health, neither have public health, neither have children's services, and neither have Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. And I think you can read a lot into the absence of any representations from them here today. We've been asked, and the good councillor Granger Mead asked, is there any evidence that he was selling to under 16s? Ma'am, before you there is no evidence that he was selling anything. Clearly he was preparing to sell, but there is no evidence of any sale, not that I can see in my redacted comments, to under 16s or over 16s. I will conclude where I sort of started by saying this. It is easy to understand what the police concerns are. We all understand it, and so does Milan. He states that he's put this episode behind him. He's supported in that claim through the fact that his convictions from 2018 to do with conduct perhaps in 2017 are spent in law. He is, however, ever mindful that his shop will be regarded as potentially high-risk premises by all the responsible authorities there in Kirklees, and will therefore make every endeavour to ensure and prove beyond any doubt that his premises are operating at optimum levels of compliance going forwards. This has been an application for a personal licence, for a premises licence. Had this been an application for a personal licence, as we have done to death, then we could have conversations about any previous antecedents. However, this is a premises licence application under Section 16, and therefore you should solely address your minds as to whether the operating schedule and offer conditions are capable of promoting the licensing objectives. In our submission, on the paperwork in front of you, they are. But if you want some further conditions, of course, ma'am, as ever, I will take your recommendations and observations to heart and will act upon them, hopefully within an hour. So consequently, and again, I exhort you to grant this highly conditioned yet modest application. Thank you.
Mr. Woodhead, would you like to sum up?
Well, Chair, basically, I've listened to what Mr. Semper has said about adjourning. We do feel that strongly about this. The actions of his applicant in the past have demonstrated that he has no regard for UK law. He may be a reformed character, but we've no evidence of that. We don't know what he's been doing for the last 2 or 3 years. I do know the shop in Scunthorpe that he was running has been closed down. The reason we asked for a month panel as well is that I feel that a month would give chance for the applicant to actually come back into this country and possibly put his side forward and answer some more questions. And I do feel an hour for the conditions is a little short, because me and my colleague do want to sit down and decide if it is granted that the conditions do really need to be stringent ones to ensure that none of the licensing objectives are impacted upon, and the health and well-being and safety of the people of Dewsbury is hopefully covered by as many conditions that we can get in place. And that's basically my summary, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it would be highly irregular for me to let Mr. Semper come in, but actually, if we can resolve, this issue about half an hour, a month's time, I think it's worth allowing Mr. Semper to come in. Sorry, you're on mute, Mr. Semper. Was I on mute then?
No, you weren't. No, I got you. No, it's not about an hour or 2 hours. It can be done in 2 hours, I'm sure. I mean, I can be there in an hour and we can sort it out face to face. But look, Mr. Woodhead mentioned the closure of a shop in Scunthorpe. I'm sorry, but I can't let that go, because you have no evidence of that in front of you. That is new evidence. And I cannot research that. We cannot look at the circumstances of that closure. With respect, he's raised a new head to the objection, which could indeed taint your decision making, and I just can't let that one go. And I'd ask you to, with respect, ignore that comment, please.
Mr. Semper, we'll take advice from the legal advisor on that one. But I agree, it is introducing new evidence which wasn't put forward in representations made earlier on in the panel. Okay, so everyone's summed up. We've come to the end, really, of listening to information and evidence in respect to this application. As a panel, we need to go away in private and consider what we've heard and come to a decision. And then we will be back. I think the issue for the panel will be, I mean, I can't prejudge what the situation might be, but about what the police have suggested about going away and possibly agreeing something else. So we'll need to take advice anyway from the legal advisor on that. So it may not be as simple as coming back and delivering a decision. there may be some form of adjournment, but I can't preempt what's going to happen. So I just want to make that clear. So at this stage, we will be going into a private session to consider what's to happen next. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience, everyone. The panel's had an opportunity to consider the information and the evidence presented today, and we feel at this stage we cannot progress with the application without first hearing from the police and hearing what proposals the police may have, and to be given an opportunity to consider those. So based on that, we've agreed that we would like to adjourn this application. There was a suggestion of the 19th of April at 10 a.m, but I understand from Mr. Semper he's not available, so we'll have to go back and reconsider a suitable date. But in the meantime, it's a good opportunity for Mr. Semper and the police to speak with one another and hopefully come up with a suitable suggestion that everybody's happy with. And on the next occasion, you know, it can be agreed and the application can be dealt with quite swiftly. So we'll leave it there. I think my colleagues will suggest another date, and maybe they will contact you, Mr. Semper, to find out when it's convenient for you. Obviously, it's important that you're there to represent your client. So I will end the meeting, everyone. Thank you so much for attending and have a great day.